Yes. 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 So whenever the group goes out to Top Golf, he's always the winner. So, yeah. All right. Well, it looks like at least half of you hung around to the end of the 7th round, huh? All right. So as we wrap up draft weekend, very excited with the the group of players that we were able to select this weekend. All of them have aspects that made us excited about them as prospects, and also as people. Our scouts, our coaches, they've been hard at work, for the last little bit, signing undrafted free agents, something that's been, really fruitful for us over the past couple of years, but particularly last year, with Ronnie Hickman and Mamou. So it's an important part of what we do, and our job's not done yet. But we like the young players that we've added to the team. We're looking forward to seeing them integrate with the veterans as we get into May. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
A couple of the guys today that maybe we could start with Thrash. What did you like so much about Jamari?
Yeah, so Jamari, we liked his route skill and his separation ability. This was a guy that both was very productive at Georgia State, and then transferring up to Louisville, really answered the bell there, and then really even through the Senior Bowl in January. We view him as a guy who can play outside and inside. He's good with the ball in his hands. So as we think through our offense and our fit within that receiver room, we're looking forward to seeing him compete for reps, and we think he's a guy that has position flex.
You go into depth on drafting Watson. What did you like about him?
Yeah, so with Nathaniel, so one of the things that we thought a lot about when we lost when we lost Sione in free agency this spring. One of the things that he was able to add when he played both Mike and Sam is a little bit more stoutness in the middle of the defense, particularly at the point of attack. And we think that, Nathaniel, he's got good range, he's incredibly smart, and he has good instincts, but he provides maybe a little bit of a diverse profile in that linebacker room because he does have a little bit more strength and power at the point of attack. So we see him as a player that has the potential to maybe develop into that type of role, Mike, Sam, flex, and ultimately be someone who's a candidate to call the defense after he gets his sea legs out from under him.
As you got later into especially those last 3 picks, how much are you guys sort of special teams looking at, especially with the changes that you're going to deal with the new kickoff rule, how they could fit in there?
That's a great question, Chris. That was actually a big part of the discussions with a number of the prospects that we talked about and debated, and some went off the board at different points, but it was a big part of the discussions. As we thought kind of through the whole big picture profile of an individual player, so definitely part of it.
Are you comfortable with Watson's off-field stuff, and do you think that's why he was still available in the 6th round?
Yeah, I can't comment on why, how other teams viewed him, but, we are comfortable with the person, yes.
How much of that, and I guess I wonder, how long has he been on your guys' radar? Because he was in school for 6 years, so you've done work on him in previous drafts.
Yeah, I would say he's probably been on our radar as much as any prospect in this class. I wouldn't say that it was anything, too far off the norm in that regard.
It's been rare for you to have a draft where you just kind of stayed put and made your pick. Is there something different about this draft?
It wasn't for a lack of effort, I can assure you, Dan. We were talking about that as we were coming downstairs. It's like, man, this is the first draft that we haven't executed a trade. I blame it on Kwesi, and you can quote me on that, because Kevin was joking. He's like, I've never heard 2 people talk more about trades involving 7th-round picks than the 2 of you and not get a deal done. But we had a number of opportunities where we were either trying to move around today, and like we talked about yesterday, we had a couple opportunities, but it just didn't make sense for whatever reason. But I would not say that that's going to be the new MO.
I think this is the 5th straight year you've drafted a wide receiver. Is that just a coincidence, or is that kind of just a byproduct of the first 2 guys that you did draft not being here?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit more coincidence. I mean, I think you see more that's going to be one of the more plentiful positions in terms of just overall quantity year over year. And then also just like as you think about different positions and where you select them, I wouldn't read too much into that, Daryl.
You guys are building bridges between Ohio State and Michigan. I know you've spent some time with Mike and with Zach. What was it like to see them together today, and just the general impressions on that?
No, it was great. I mean, I think those two guys are going to add a lot to our locker room in different ways. I think Mike with just his passion and his energy, and I think Zach's kind of the steady presence. But I'm looking forward to seeing those two battle it out on the practice field. Once we get the pads on, and they're both looking forward to being teammates.
Cross-trained a little bit at center. Is that maybe down the line you guys look around with him?
Yeah, very rarely will we bring a lineman in and have them work at one spot. Especially young players, we want them to have positional flexibility, and Zach's incredibly smart and someone that we expect to be able to handle the load of multiple spots.
Go ahead.
When you look at that tight end room, was that a position where you considered guys during this draft? And I know there's a lot of time left in the offseason, but how do you think it kind of stacks up right now? Do you feel like maybe you're a guy short?
Yeah, I'd say in any room we don't feel like we're done. The first game is until Labor Day weekend or after Labor Day weekend. So we've got a long way to go. We can probably maybe catch our breath for a day, but I think we talked about it before the draft. Zadarius we traded for on a Friday night in the middle of May. Shelby we signed early August, and we traded for Pierre and Dustin at the end of camp. So there's still work to do on the roster, and that's not just limited to the tight end room, but that's what the next couple months are for.
Was in a spot you came into the weekend going, we really like to address that spot? Or
what do I typically say before the draft in terms of the draft? So.
Towards the end of the Deshaun Watson trade, the last pick was made by Houston. Just wondering, what do you think about that now, knowing that that's kind of behind you in some respects, and you'll have a first-round pick next year? Can you sort of wrap up how you feel about the whole thing right now?
I'll be honest, in truth, Mary Kay, I haven't thought about it that way or spend any time reflecting on it. I really just look at it as, hey, here are our resources in a given year. How do we best apply them to the team to make it better in the short and long term? So that's not something I really think about.
How much are you looking forward to having something to do on Thursday night next year? Okay.
For now. No, look, it'll be great to have kind of our full complement of draft picks back for sure. How we deploy them, we'll see over the next year.
Could you speak to the developmental aspect? The bulk of this draft here seems to be about bringing in some young guys that maybe not immediately are going to have an impact. Maybe hope one or two of them can, but down the road they will. Just how you get these guys in here.
Sure, we look at it. I mean, these are not finished products. Some of them are very young. Obviously, Mike is 20 years old, so these guys, these people are developing, off the field. Obviously, we're going to spend a lot of time with them on the field to develop them and their skill set. But that's a huge. We talked about it yesterday. That's a huge part of our job as coaches is to get as much out of these players as we can, and we're eager to get to work with them in a couple weeks.
I was going to ask you, Kevin, so how excited do you get when you have a new draft class and you'll see them on the field here in just a couple weeks?
Yeah, that's the thing. Seeing them on the grass is what's most exciting. Bringing them in here, and it's a long, arduous process, and AB and his crew did a great job, and it's so organized, and really they stayed true to really the process, if you will. Then when we get them on the grass, that's the fun part for the coaches, where we can take them through an individual drill and start to acclimate them to our schemes.
Last week you talked about potentially with the new kickoff rules, the size of coverage players maybe looking for some different things. Did Watson's size play a big factor in determining his value on special?
That's a great question observation. It did. His style of play did. I think it's something for us when we went through the process. We thought he could fill this. Or potentially fill this specialized role at linebacker, but we also thought he could be a multi-phase producer on special teams, and specifically with the new kickoff rule. As we talked about before the draft, probably none of us really know how it's going to look and operate, but it certainly is a speculative play on our part that we think that's something that he could be good at.
We get a guy like Thrash, who it sounds like he hasn't played a ton of special teams, and that obviously becomes such an important part for rookies. Like, how do you go about evaluating a guy like that, basically?
Truthfully, with receivers, unless they're returners, they're typically not like highly involved in special teams, maybe I should say it differently. They're not highly impactful, like multi-phase producers, just because of what's required. So I think guys that do that are a little bit more the exception to the rule. But we always tell our guys, like, hey, if you're not Amari Cooper, like, you've got to be able to do more to be active on game day. So that'll certainly be not just a challenge to Jamari, but really all of our young guys who probably for a lot of their careers have not played special teams, and this will really be the first time.
How do you approach, I know you're not going to give names right now, but as you try to approach that UDFA class, what's kind of your method? What are you looking for as you kind of piece that together?
So the way we look at it is any player that we add to the roster, they should have some clear strength, even if it's very narrow. Are they someone who is really fast or really strong, or someone who can rush the passer, or someone who's really good in the run game? There should be some type of clear strength for why they are here, because once we get to September and we're putting the team together, as you talk about, call it spots 40 through 53, it really is a puzzle piece. You're trying to complement your starters and your primary players with skill sets that you may lack in certain areas. So when we go in the undrafted free agent process, we're looking for guys with strengths. It may, and probably by definition, those guys are maybe a little bit more limited coming in. But it's like, hey, does this guy have size? Can he run? Or if we have a certain profile at the position, we're looking for the most important trait. So maybe a perfect example would be, Ronnie Hickman last year. We thought this was a guy who was athletic, who could run, and had great ball skills. So we're like, hey, this is a guy who could be a developmental free safety for us. And Ronnie came along even more quickly than we anticipated, but those strengths were something that we felt would complement our room.
Fit that bill a little bit too, because I thought I saw he was on that freaks list. Was there something specifically about his traits that jumped out at you guys?
Yeah, with Jawan, we really thought that it's maybe a little bit like what we talked about with Michael yesterday, where his strength, he's kind of like a move style defensive tackle. And for us, as we get into the later rounds or we get into the undrafted free agent pool, you'll see us choose or select or sign guys that are more that profile because of what we ask our defensive line to do in this scheme.
Into Miles Harden.
Yeah, so Miles, small school corner, who we thought actually has a pretty well-rounded skill set. I think he probably has maybe a little bit more, from our perspective, a nickel profile with even maybe some potential to flex at safety. But really smart kid, was productive. Out at South Dakota, good enough tools for the position. And I think, as Nate, corner will always be a premium spot for us.
For defense to offense, did it just kind of turn out that way? You didn't go into the draft thinking that you needed to go heavy defense?
Yeah,
right?
it kind of, and I'll be honest, like, probably going to the draft, if you would have asked me how it would have shaped out, it probably would have been the other way, just because of some of the strengths and weaknesses of the draft class. So it's just another reminder to us that you just have to stay flexible and adaptable with what the board throws at you. But we're excited about the young group, the group of young men that we've added.
I know how you're going to answer this, but I've asked, have you made a decision on Greg's fifth-year option?
Very happy with Greg. Wanted as many man corners as we can have, and we'll let you guys know when at the appropriate time.
We're earlier you're talking about traits. I think last year you were talking about horses, and horses run really well. Yeah. Is there something off the top of your head, like in this draft class, this guy does X really well, and that stands out above the rest?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. I think probably the easy one is Mike, just because his ability as a rusher, just both with his physical tools and feel, it's something that we put a premium value on. But I really could go down the list. Like Zach, we think is his superpower is he's an excellent pass protector. Jamari, he's an outstanding separator. Nathaniel, he's really good in the run game, particularly using his strength. Miles is probably a little bit his instincts and versatility, and then Jawan, it's his movement ability. So that's not to say that all those individuals are isolated to that primary feature, but it's certainly something that made them attractive to us.
One thing to
Let me go here and then I'll hit you, Daryl.
I'm curious if in the 5th round was there a little brotherly instinct in play when the Eagles came up and jumped you guys to try to get Jeremiah Trotter Jr.?
Oh, no, there wasn't. I'd like to say there was a better story to that, but no, there wasn't. There wasn't.
It's one thing to rebuild a roster. It's another to kind of get the wheel of talent flowing, so to speak, where you can cultivate your own to compensate for any losses. Do you feel that now you're as deep as you are into this, that you've gotten to that stage in roster building where you feel like that wheel is starting to naturally turn for you, as opposed to you're constantly filling holes and things like that?
Yeah, truthfully, I do, Daryl. I certainly hope so. But we feel good about the health and depth of the roster. We won't know till we get to the fall because, as I say every year, guys surprise you in both directions, and things change fast in the NFL. As we see. So, as we sit here today, though, we're happy with where we stand. We're not satisfied, and we know that we still have work to do and areas to bolster and supplement, but we do feel good about the health as we stand today.
Perhaps a quarterback maybe in undrafted or somewhere that you guys could bring in here, because it seems like you might need another arm or a developmental player with what's going on with Deshaun and Dorian.
I'd say that's unlikely. Yeah.
Draft is perfect. Did you guys accomplish what you guys wanted to accomplish this weekend and maximizing those late round picks?
I'd say so. Number one, I don't know that everyone's going to say they accomplished what they intended to accomplish, but the truth is none of us actually know. All we can say is we tried to make the best decisions, that were at the moments that they were placed in front of us. I think we had some goals in terms of pick management or resource management that we weren't afforded the right opportunity to execute on. But that being said, we're happy with the group of players that we're bringing in.
Okay.
All right.
Everybody go home. Yes.